My boyfriend called me too fat at his company dinner, then left me with a $300 bill, mocking me in front of everyone. A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you. I just smiled, saying nothing. But when I woke up this morning, my phone was blowing up with 23 missed calls, and I knew it was time for him to learn the truth. I'm still processing what happened last weekend. I keep replaying it in my head and wondering if I somehow imagined the whole thing. But nope, my maxed out credit card and the tear stains on my pillow confirm it was very real. For context, I'd been with Derek for 3 years. 3 years of supporting his career, cooking his favorite meals, and listening to his work stories that seemed to get more grandiose with each telling. He worked at Maxwell Investments, constantly talking about his corner office and how he was practically running the department, though he never invited me to any company events until now. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. Sure, he had these little helpful comments about my appearance. Things like that dress makes your arms look bigger, or maybe go easy on the dessert tonight. I always brushed it off as him being honest, or even caring. Past me was such a doormat. So when Derek texted me about joining him for his company's annual dinner, I was actually excited. Finally, after 3 years, I would get to meet his colleagues and be part of his work life. I spent a week finding the perfect black dress, elegant, flattering, and just formal enough for a corporate event. I even splurged on professional hair and makeup. Looking in the mirror before leaving my apartment, I actually felt beautiful. The restaurant was exactly as pretentious as I expected, the kind with tiny portions and no prices on the menu. Red flag number 1. Derek was already there with his colleagues, laughing loudly at something on someone's phone. When he saw me approaching, his smile faltered for just a second. "You're late," he said, not bothering to stand up. I checked my watch. I was actually 5 minutes early. Traffic was bad. I lied, not wanting to create tension. It's nice to finally meet everyone. The introductions were awkward. Derek barely spoke my name loud enough for anyone to hear, and his hand on my back was pushing me into my seat almost immediately, as if wanting to make me smaller, less noticeable. Throughout dinner, Derek talked over me whenever I tried to join the conversation. When I mentioned a project I was working on at my marketing firm, he interrupted with, "She works for that small local agency, the one that does ads for car dealerships and stuff." The dismissive wave of his hand made my cheeks burn. His boss, Mr. Maxwell, a distinguished older man with kind eyes, seemed to notice my discomfort and kindly asked about my work. Just as I started to explain our recent campaign that had actually won a regional award, Derek cut in again. "Honey, nobody wants to hear about local commercials. Thomas, tell them about that Goldman Sachs deal you're working on." I fell silent, pushing my barely touched salmon around the plate. The red flags were now flashing emergency sirens in my head, but I kept smiling, not wanting to embarrass Derek, though he clearly had no such concerns about embarrassing me. When the dessert menus came, I politely declined and Derek immediately said, "Good choice, babe. Watching our figure, right?" He patted my hand while glancing at his colleagues with a smirk. The table fell uncomfortably silent. "Actually," I said, finally finding my voice, "I would love the chocolate souffle." The waiter nodded and left before Derek could object. That's when everything truly fell apart. Derek leaned in, his voice low but perfectly audible to everyone at our table. "Are you serious? That dress is already struggling to contain you. No one to stop, Emma." The table went silent. I felt like I'd been slapped. 3 years of helpful comments suddenly crystallized into what they truly were, cruelty disguised as care. Mr. Maxwell cleared his throat. "Derek, that's completely inappropriate." Derek's face flushed, not with shame, but with anger, at me for somehow embarrassing him by existing. He stood up abruptly. "You know what? I don't think this is working out. I've been trying to make this relationship work, but I'm just not attracted to you anymore." He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you. You're not exactly a prize." The restaurant seemed to freeze in that moment. Waiters stopped mid-step. Nearby diners paused with forks halfway to their mouths. Then Derek did the unthinkable. He tossed his company credit card to his colleague Thomas. "Put your drinks on here. I'm out. And to me, you can handle your own bill, right? Consider it the last favor I'm doing you. Maybe eating ramen for a month will help with that weight issue." Then he walked out, leaving me sitting there with a table of strangers and a $300 bill I could barely afford. I should have cried. I should have caused a scene. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I smiled, took a deep breath, and calmly signaled the waiter. "I'll be taking care of my portion," I said evenly, handing over my credit card, the one I'd been saving for emergencies. This certainly qualified. Mr. Maxwell was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I'm terribly sorry about that display," he said quietly. "Please allow me to take care of this." "That's very kind," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "But I've got this. I've been taking care of myself for a long time." As I signed the receipt, Mr. Maxwell handed me his business card. "Emma, was it? I admire your composure. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call." I thanked him, said polite goodbyes to the shocked table, and walked out with my head held high, though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get my coat on. It wasn't until I was safely in my Uber that I let the tears fall. 3 years. 3 years of shrinking myself to fit into Derek's life, only to be discarded like yesterday's leftovers. What Derek didn't know, what I had never told him because he never bothered to ask about my family, was exactly who Robert Maxwell was to me. The distinguished CEO with the kind eyes wasn't just some random boss. He was my uncle, the uncle who had practically raised me after my parents died, but who had insisted I make my own way in the world without using his name. The uncle who had watched me date his arrogant employee for 3 years, respecting my wishes to keep our relationship private so I could stand on my own merits. That night, I called Uncle Robert from my apartment. "I'm so sorry," I began, but he cut me off. "No, Emma, I'm sorry. I had no idea he treated you that way. Had I known, it's not your fault," I assured him. "I never told you because I wanted to handle my relationships on my own. I never wanted special treatment." "Well," he said after a long pause, "he certainly won't be getting any special treatment on Monday." I woke up this morning to my phone vibrating off the nightstand, 23 missed calls from Derek. Apparently, he'd arrived at work to find his desk being packed up by security. His corner office? Never existed. His running the department? He was a junior analyst on probation for taking credit for other people's work. And now, Uncle Robert had finally had enough. The 24th call came as I was making coffee. I let it go to voicemail, then listened as Derek's voice transformed from the confident man who had humiliated me to a desperate, pleading mess. "Emma, please, you have to help me. Why didn't you tell me Maxwell was your uncle? This is all a misunderstanding. I was just nervous. I didn't mean any of it. Please, Emma, call him. Tell him we're still together, that it was just a fight. I'll lose everything." I deleted the voicemail, blocked his number, and smiled as I sipped my coffee. Some lessons are expensive to learn. Derek's was going to cost him much more than $300. I spent the weekend in a daze, alternating between crying sessions and angry cleaning sprees. My apartment had never been so spotless. Turns out rage is an excellent motivator for scrubbing tile grout. By Sunday night, I'd purged every trace of Derek from my space. Photos deleted, gifts donated, even his favorite coffee mug accidentally shattered in the sink. My best friend Zoe came over with wine and ice cream, the universal first aid kit for breakups. "I never liked him," she confessed, pouring me another glass. "The way he always talked down to you. I wanted to say something, but I wouldn't have listened," I finished for her. "I know, I kept making excuses for him. So your uncle is really going to fire him?" Zoe asked, eyes wide. I shook my head. "Not exactly. Uncle Robert said Derek's being reassigned to the company's data entry division in the basement. Apparently, there's a policy against outright firing someone for personal reasons. The basement?" Zoe nearly choked on her wine. "Mr. Corner Office is going to be entering data in a basement?" Despite everything, I laughed. It felt good, like breaking through ice I didn't know was covering me. Monday morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating again. Derek had created a new email address to bypass my block. "Emma, please, I'm begging you." They moved my desk to the basement. No windows. Next to the boiler room. "I have to enter data all day. This can't be happening. Call your uncle, please." I deleted it without responding. Then another came. "I didn't mean what I said. You're beautiful. I was just stressed about work. Please, Emma, I'll do anything." The desperate messages continued all morning. By lunchtime, I'd received 17 emails, each more frantic than the last. Part of me, the part that had accepted his helpful comments for 3 years, felt a twinge of guilt. But then I remembered his voice in that restaurant. "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you." The gratitude, it seemed, was now flowing in the opposite direction. That afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emma, it's Thomas from the dinner on Friday." Derek's colleague sounded uncomfortable. "Look, I want to apologize for not saying anything when Derek was being, well, awful to you." "You don't owe me an apology," I said, surprised by the call. "Maybe not, but I'm giving you one anyway. The thing is," he hesitated, "Derek's been telling everyone at the office that you're using your family connection to ruin his career. He's making you out to be some vindictive ex who was hiding her relationship to the CEO." My stomach dropped. "What? Nobody's buying it though," Thomas quickly added. "Especially after what we all witnessed at dinner. Actually, that's partly why I'm calling. A bunch of us were talking, and, well, Derek's been taking credit for other people's work for years. He's been claiming he wrote reports that we all know he didn't. That doesn't surprise me," I said, thinking of all the times Derek had exaggerated his importance at work. "The thing is," Thomas continued, "we've all been too intimidated to say anything because he's always bragging about his special relationship with Mr. Maxwell. Now we know that was a lie too." I felt a surge of anger, not just for myself, but for everyone Derek had stepped on while climbing his imaginary ladder. "Thomas, would you and the others be willing to document this? Send examples to HR?" "Already started," he replied. That's actually the other reason I called. We found something concerning financial reports that don't add up. Nothing major, but enough discrepancies that we think Derek might be skimming from client accounts. My hand tightened around the phone. You need to tell my uncle. Immediately. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Had I really spent 3 years with someone capable of stealing from his employer? How much of the Derek I thought I knew was real? I was still processing this when my doorbell rang. When I checked the peephole, I nearly gasped. It was Derek, looking disheveled in a wrinkled suit, holding what appeared to be a bouquet of wilting grocery store flowers. Emma, please, he called through the door. I know you're in there. I can fix this. We can fix this. Just talk to your uncle. I didn't open the door. Go away, Derek. You can't do this to me. His voice changed instantly, the pleading tone replaced by something ugly. 3 years I wasted on you, and this is how you repay me? By running to your rich uncle. I didn't tell him anything he didn't see with his own eyes, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. You think you've won? He hissed through the door. You think you can just humiliate me and get away with it? I know things about Maxwell Investments that would make the front page of the Wall Street Journal. One call to a reporter, and I yanked the door open, catching him mid-sentence. Are you threatening my uncle's company? I held my phone up, recording app open. Please continue. Derek's face went from rage to panic in an instant. I didn't mean. Emma, be reasonable. I'm desperate here. You're threatening to spread lies about a company because you got caught being verbally abusive and possibly stealing, I stated calmly. Is that an accurate summary? He backed away, dropping the flowers. This isn't over, he mumbled, but the threat sounded hollow now. As he retreated down the hallway, I called after him. By the way, Derek, I always thought your corner office sounded suspiciously like the conference room you were pretending was yours. That night, I sent the recording to Uncle Robert, along with Thomas's information about the financial discrepancies. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't need to. The next morning, the building security officer called to let me know Derek had been escorted from the premises, carrying a cardboard box of personal items. Not reassigned this time. Fired. An hour later, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, Derek's third new contact attempt. You ruined my life. Hope you're happy now. For a moment, I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the block button. Then I typed, a person like you should be grateful I even bothered to record your threats. Enjoy unemployment. Then I blocked him, tossed my phone onto the couch, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt the full weight of his criticism fall away from my shoulders. I ordered the largest, most decadent pizza on the menu, put on my comfiest sweats, and watched whatever I wanted on TV without hearing a single comment about my choice of show or how many slices I ate. It turns out freedom tastes even better than revenge. But I have to admit, the revenge was pretty satisfying too. Later that evening, Uncle Robert called. Emma, I need to thank you. The information you provided led our finance team to discover significant irregularities. Derek wasn't just stealing small amounts. He was setting up a scheme that could have cost investors millions if left unchecked. I'm glad I could help, I said. There's something else, Uncle Robert continued. Our marketing director is leaving next month. With your experience and that award-winning campaign you mentioned at dinner, well, the position is open if you're interested. I nearly dropped the phone. Are you serious? Uncle Robert, I appreciate it, but I don't want a job out of pity or... This isn't pity, Emma. This is recognition of talent that Derek tried to diminish. You've earned this opportunity on your own merits. The only thing our relationship did was finally put you in front of the right people. As I considered his offer, I realized something important. Accepting help doesn't mean giving up independence. Sometimes it just means allowing yourself the same opportunities that others freely give themselves. I'd like to interview for the position, I finally said. A proper interview with the whole team. Uncle Robert chuckled. I expected nothing less. Oh, and Emma? Derek tried to withdraw $50,000 from his corporate expense account before security escorted him out. The police may be contacting you for a statement about those threats. I smiled to myself. Some lessons are expensive indeed. That night, my phone began buzzing again, this time with messages from a lawyer claiming to represent Derek, demanding I delete the recording and cease my campaign of harassment. I forwarded everything to Uncle Robert's legal team and went to bed. Let Derek learn what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. And let me be very clear, I wasn't using my connection to punish an ex-boyfriend. I was using my voice to expose a liar, a thief, and a bully. The difference, as Derek was learning, really matters. 2 weeks passed in a blur of police statements and legal consultations. Derek's attempted embezzlement had triggered a full company audit, revealing a pattern of financial manipulation dating back almost a year. The district attorney was now involved, and I had become a key witness. Not exactly how I'd planned to spend my spring. Despite the chaos, I went through with the interview at Maxwell Investments. Walking into that gleaming office building felt different now. not as Derek's girlfriend, shrinking myself to fit his narrative, but as Emma Parker, marketing professional with a portfolio of award-winning campaigns. The interview panel consisted of 5 people, none of whom were my uncle. He had recused himself from the process entirely, determined that I would be judged solely on merit. The questions were tough, the competition fierce. They'd narrowed it down to 3 candidates from over 100 applicants. When the call came 3 days later, I was elbow-deep in dish soap, scrubbing my stress away. Ms. Parker, this is Vivian Chun from Maxwell Investments Human Resources. I'm pleased to inform you that the committee has unanimously selected you for the marketing director position. I nearly dropped the plate I was washing. Unanimously? Your campaign portfolio was exceptional, and your vision for our company's rebrand strategy was exactly what we've been looking for, she explained. Your references spoke very highly of your work ethic and creativity. We'd like you to start next Monday if that works for you. After we worked out the details, I hung up and just stood there, water dripping from my hands onto the kitchen floor. I had done it, on my own merit. The validation I had sought from Derek for years had come instead from a room full of industry professionals who saw my worth clearly. I was celebrating with Zoe that evening when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Emma, it's Miranda, Derek's sister. My stomach tightened. I had met Miranda only twice during our relationship. Derek had always kept me separate from his family, another red flag I'd conveniently ignored. Miranda, I'm not interested in. Please, she interrupted, her voice breaking. I know you have every right to hang up, but Derek's been arrested. They're saying he could face up to 15 years. My parents are devastated. I closed my eyes, trying to block the unwanted wave of sympathy. I'm sorry for your family, but Derek made his own choices. I know, she said quietly. I'm not calling to defend him or ask you to drop charges. I'm calling to apologize. Our family, we should have seen the signs. The way he talked about women, his entitlement, his lies about his job, we just laughed it off as Derek being Derek. The raw honesty in her voice caught me off guard. Before all this, she continued, he told us you two broke up because you were clingy and desperate. After seeing the evidence and hearing the witness statements. God, Emma, I'm so ashamed we raised someone capable of treating another person that way. I sat down heavily on my couch. You're not responsible for his actions. Maybe not directly, but we never challenged him. Even when we caught him in lies, we just rolled our eyes and moved on. She paused. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that not everyone in his life thinks you did anything wrong. Some of us are grateful that you stopped him before he hurt more people. After we hung up, I sat in silence, processing. The family I had never been allowed to know was reaching out to support me instead of him. The narrative Derek had created was unraveling from all sides. The next morning, I walked into Maxwell Investments for my first day, dressed in a beautiful blue suit that actually fit. Not the size smaller I used to buy because Derek said it would motivate me. The receptionist smiled warmly. Ms. Parker, welcome. Mr. Maxwell asked to see you in his office before orientation. Uncle Robert was standing by the window when I entered, looking out at the city skyline. He turned with a proud smile that reminded me so much of my father, his brother, that my heart ached. Emma, congratulations on earning this position. The committee was thoroughly impressed. Thank you for recusing yourself, I said. It means a lot to know I got this on my own. He nodded, then his expression turned serious. Derek's lawyer reached out again. They're offering a plea deal. He'll admit to the financial crimes if we drop the harassment charges. I crossed my arms. And what does the company want? This isn't about what the company wants, he replied firmly. This is about what you want. You're the one he hurt, both personally and with his threats. This is your decision. I thought about Miranda's call, about Derek's parents, about the years I'd spent trying to be good enough for someone who was never good enough for me. I don't need him to face harassment charges, I said finally. The financial crimes will be enough. I just want to move forward. Uncle Robert studied me for a moment. You're showing more compassion than he deserves. I'm not doing it for him, I clarified. I'm doing it for me. I don't want to spend any more energy on Derek than I already have. He smiled with understanding. Well then, Marketing Director Parker, shall we introduce you to your new team? The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. My new role was challenging and fulfilling in ways I hadn't experienced before. My team was talented and respectful. No one talked over me in meetings or dismissed my ideas. I found myself standing taller, speaking more confidently, taking up the space I deserved. On a rainy Tuesday, about a month into my new job, I was leaving the office when I nearly collided with someone in the lobby. I'm so sorry, I wasn't. I stopped mid-sentence, recognizing Thomas, Derek's former colleague. Emma, or should I say Director Parker now? He smiled warmly. Congratulations on the position. The marketing team can't stop singing your praises. Thank you, I said, genuinely pleased to see a friendly face. How are things in finance? Much better without certain influences, he replied diplomatically. Actually, I was hoping to run into you. Would you like to grab coffee sometime? Not work-related. I hesitated, the weight of my recent relationship still fresh. Thomas seemed to read my thoughts. Just coffee. No pressure. I just thought it might be nice to get to know each other without previous complications in the way. Looking at his kind eyes that had shown concern for me even when I was a stranger being humiliated at a dinner table, I made a decision. Coffee sounds nice, but I should warn you, I order the desserts I want, I wear the clothes I like, and I take up exactly as much space as I need. He grinned. I wouldn't have it any other way. As we walked toward the exit, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Former financial analyst pleads guilty to embezzlement, faces 7 to 10 years. Derek's story was ending, but mine was just beginning. Outside, the rain had stopped, and a brilliant rainbow arched across the sky. Nature's own reminder that sometimes, the most beautiful things appear right after the storm. That evening, I ordered my favorite takeout and ate it while sitting cross-legged on my couch, not worrying about calories or judgments or helpful comments. I scrolled through my phone to a photo I'd kept, the only one I hadn't deleted. It showed me from 3 years ago, smiling broadly before I met Derek, before I started to make myself smaller. I studied that confident smile, realizing it had finally returned to my face. I had come full circle. Some people enter our lives to love us. Others enter to teach us how to love ourselves. Derek, unwittingly, had done the latter. When my phone rang again, I didn't feel the familiar dread. Instead, I answered with a smile in my voice, ready for whatever came next. Not because I was grateful for whatever scraps of affection someone might throw my way, but because I knew, finally, unquestionably, my own worth. And that, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all. 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of meetings, campaigns, and successes. My marketing team had increased company engagement by 47%, and our latest digital campaign had gone viral in the financial sector. Not an easy feat for investment services marketing. I had found my rhythm, my confidence, and most importantly, my voice. Coffee with Thomas had turned into lunch, then dinner, then weekend hikes, a slow, comfortable progression that respected my need for space and healing. Unlike Derek, Thomas listened when I spoke, asked questions because he genuinely wanted to know the answers, and never once made a helpful comment about my appearance or food choices. "You know," he said one evening as we walked along the riverfront, "I admired you that night at the restaurant." I raised an eyebrow. "When I was being publicly humiliated. Not my finest moment. When you refused to break," he corrected. "Derek spent 3 years trying to make you smaller, and in one moment, when he thought he'd crushed you completely, you stood taller than anyone in that room." I squeezed his hand, still getting used to this strange new feeling, being appreciated for my strength rather than punished for it. Life was good, almost too good. I should have known the calm wouldn't last. It was a regular Tuesday morning when I stepped off the elevator and noticed the unusual silence in the office. Heads turned as I walked to my office, whispers following in my wake. Before I could ask what was happening, my assistant Miranda, no relation to Derek's sister, an irony not lost on me, rushed over with a tablet in hand. "Emma, you need to see this." On screen was a financial news site with the headline, "Maxwell Investments Under Fire. CEO's niece in charge of marketing raises questions of nepotism and competence." My stomach dropped as I skimmed the article, a scathing piece questioning my qualifications, suggesting I had used family connections to secure my position, and implying that recent company successes were being artificially inflated to justify my hire. "It gets worse," Miranda said softly, scrolling down to show the author's name. Jessica Winters, Derek's new girlfriend. I closed my eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. Of course, Derek might be awaiting sentencing, but he had found another way to attack me. "Emma." Uncle Robert was standing in the doorway of my office, his expression grave. "Conference room, please. Board emergency meeting." The next hour was excruciating, sitting at a long table surrounded by board members while they discussed me as if I weren't there. The optics are concerning. Perhaps we should have disclosed the relationship. The timing with her ex-boyfriend's trial is problematic. Finally, I'd had enough. I stood up, commanding the room's attention. "With all due respect to everyone here, I earned this position. Every member of the hiring committee can confirm I was selected unanimously based on my qualifications alone. The marketing department's numbers speak for themselves. 47% increase in engagement, 28% growth in new client acquisition since I took over." I looked each board member in the eye. "If you want me to resign to avoid bad press, I will. But don't pretend it's because I'm not qualified or that I didn't earn my place here." Uncle Robert watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When I finished, he simply said, "No one is asking you to resign, Emma. Then what exactly is this meeting about?" I challenged. The board chair, a formidable woman named Eleanor Grant, leaned forward. "It's about how we respond, together, as a company that stands behind its people." That afternoon, Maxwell Investments released a comprehensive statement detailing my qualifications, the rigorous hiring process, and performance metrics since my appointment. They included statements from every member of the hiring committee confirming that Robert Maxwell had recused himself completely from the decision. But the damage control didn't stop there. By evening, 3 former employees had come forward to corroborate Derek's pattern of harassment and dishonesty. Thomas provided financial journalists with documentation of how Derek had tried to take credit for others' work over the years. Most surprisingly, Miranda, Derek's sister, gave an interview describing her brother's history of manipulative behavior and confirming that I had actually shown restraint and compassion during his legal proceedings. The narrative was shifting, but I still felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't since that night at the restaurant. That feeling only intensified when my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Emma Parker?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Jessica Winters from Financial Daily." The voice was cool, professional. "I wrote the article about you this morning." My grip tightened on the phone. "I'm aware. I'd like to meet with you. There's more to this story than I initially reported." Every instinct told me to refuse, to protect myself from another attack. But something in her tone made me pause. "Why should I trust you?" A long silence then, because Derek lied to me too. And I'm starting to think I'm not the first. We met at a quiet cafe the next day. Jessica was younger than I expected, probably fresh out of journalism school, with nervous eyes and a notebook filled with questions. "Derek told me you used your family connection to ruin his career after a bad breakup," she began. "He said you were vindictive, unstable, and you believed him without verifying?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. She flushed. "I did verify, with sources he provided. But after your company's statement yesterday, I started digging deeper." She slid a folder across the table. "These are statements from 3 other women, all dated Derek. All describe the same pattern of behavior you experienced." I opened the folder with shaking hands, reading accounts that mirrored my own experience with chilling accuracy. The gradual undermining of confidence, the helpful comments about appearance, the isolation from friends and family, the public humiliation when they finally stood up for themselves. "He's been doing this for years," Jessica said quietly, "using charm to draw women in, then systematically breaking them down. When they leave, he retaliates however he can." I looked up from the statements. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm writing a follow-up piece. Not just a correction, but an exposé on Derek Morrison and men like him who use emotional manipulation as a form of control." Her eyes met mine, determined now. "And I want to include your story, the full version, if you're willing to share it." That night, I sat at my computer for hours, typing, deleting, retyping my experience. Not just the public humiliation at the restaurant or the subsequent revenge, but the slow, insidious way Derek had chipped away at my self-confidence over 3 years. The casual comments about my weight, my clothes, my intelligence. The way he interrupted me in conversations. The subtle isolation from friends who weren't good enough for us. I wrote about the shame that kept me silent, the gratitude I felt for criticism that I mistook for care, and the revelation that standing up for myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. When I finished, I read it aloud to Thomas over the phone. "Are you sure you want to make this public?" he asked gently. "You don't owe anyone your story." "I'm not doing it for anyone else," I replied. "I'm doing it for myself, and maybe for the next woman who thinks she needs to be grateful for scraps of affection." Jessica's follow-up article was published a week later. The Pattern of Abuse: How Emotional Manipulators Operate in Professional Settings. It featured not only my story, but those of the other women Derek had targeted, alongside expert commentary on recognizing and responding to workplace emotional abuse. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from people sharing similar experiences. Interview requests from major networks. A book deal offer from a prominent publisher. But the most significant reaction came from unexpected quarters. First, the Maxwell Investments Board voted unanimously to create a workplace respect initiative with a zero-tolerance policy for behavior like Derek's. Then came a call from the district attorney's office. 3 more charges had been added to Derek's case based on new evidence of harassment from former colleagues who had been inspired to come forward after reading the article. And finally, an email arrived from Derek's mother. "Dear Emma, I don't expect forgiveness or even understanding, but I wanted you to know that your courage in speaking out has forced our family to confront some painful truths. Derek's behavior didn't happen in a vacuum. There were signs we ignored, excuses we made, boundaries we failed to enforce. We are working with a family therapist now to understand how we contributed to his sense of entitlement and lack of empathy. It may be too late for Derek, who still refuses to truly acknowledge the harm he's caused, but perhaps we can break the pattern for future generations in our family. Your strength has created ripples you may never fully see. With respect and regret, Margaret Morrison." I read the email 3 times, tears streaming down my face. not tears of sadness or anger, but of release. The final weight I hadn't even realized I was still carrying, the need for acknowledgement that what happened was real and wrong, had been lifted. That weekend, Thomas and I went hiking in the mountains. At the summit, overlooking the vast landscape below, he turned to me. "You know what I admire most about you?" he asked. I braced myself out of habit, then relaxed. This wasn't Derek. This was Thomas. "What?" I asked. "Your capacity for growth. You took something designed to destroy you and used it to become stronger, not just for yourself but for others." I looked out at the horizon, thinking about the journey, from the humiliated woman at that restaurant table to the marketing director whose story was helping others recognize and escape similar situations. "The funny thing is," I said finally, "when Derek said a girl like you should be grateful I even dated you, he was actually right, just not in the way he meant." Thomas looked puzzled. "I am grateful," I explained, "not for his cruelty, but for the moment it became so undeniable that I couldn't ignore it anymore. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to find your foundation." As we made our way back down the mountain, my phone buzzed with a notification. Derek Morrison had been sentenced to 12 years for financial crimes and workplace harassment. I put my phone away without commenting. His story had stopped being the center of mine long ago. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, a glass of wine in hand, completely at peace with taking up my space in the world. No more, no less than I deserved. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't what you do to someone else. It's who you become despite them. And I had become exactly who I was always meant to be. 1 year to the day after that fateful company dinner, I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my dress, a confident red number that hugged my curves in all the right places. Tonight was the annual Maxwell Investments Gala, and as marketing director, I would be presenting our department's achievements to the company's most important clients and partners. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Car's here. Can't wait to see you shine tonight." I smiled at his message. After 9 months together, Thomas had proven himself to be everything Derek wasn't: supportive, kind, and genuinely proud of my successes rather than threatened by them. We had moved in together last month, a step I took with clear eyes and an open heart, no longer desperate for approval or afraid of losing someone's affection. As I gathered my presentation materials, an email notification popped up on my screen. The sender's name made me freeze: Derek Morrison. For a moment, I considered deleting it unread. Derek was 6 months into his sentence at a minimum security prison. What could he possibly have to say that I needed to hear? But curiosity won out. With steady hands, I opened the message. "Emma, they encourage us to make amends as part of the rehabilitation program here. I've written this email 17 times, trying to find the right words. The truth is, there are no right words for what I did to you. Not just at the restaurant, but for 3 years before that. I've been working with a therapist who's helping me understand my patterns of behavior, the need to control, the insecurity I masked with arrogance, the way I tore others down to feel better about myself. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I recognize the damage I caused, and I am genuinely sorry. Your article changed more lives than you know. They use it in our therapy group here as an example of the impact emotional manipulation can have. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. And I hope you never again let anyone make you feel small. Derek." I sat back, a complex swirl of emotions washing over me. Not the anguish or rage I might have expected a year ago, but something closer to closure. I didn't need his apology, but there was something validating about having the truth acknowledged by the person who had tried so hard to distort it. After careful consideration, I typed a brief reply. "Derek, thank you for your email. I appreciate your acknowledgement. I hope your rehabilitation is sincere, and that you use your time to become someone who builds others up rather than tears them down. Emma." Short, civil, final. I didn't know him more, and I didn't want to give more. Some chapters are meant to be closed, not revisited. The gala was being held at the same upscale restaurant where Derek had humiliated me a year before, a coincidence that hadn't escaped my notice. As Thomas and I walked through those same doors, memories flickered at the edges of my consciousness, but they no longer held power over me. Uncle Robert greeted us at the entrance, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. "Emma, the woman of the hour." He embraced me warmly, then shook Thomas's hand. "You both look wonderful. Nervous about your speech?" Thomas asked as we found our table. I considered the question. Not nervous. Ready. The evening progressed with the usual corporate event formalities: cocktails, dinner, speeches from various department heads. When it was my turn to present, I approached the podium with confidence, my heels clicking steadily against the hardwood floor. "Good evening, everyone," I began, surveying the room filled with the exact kind of people who had witnessed my humiliation a year ago. For those who don't know me, I'm Emma Parker, marketing director at Maxwell Investments. As I launched into my presentation, showcasing the campaigns that had increased client engagement and brand recognition, I caught sight of a familiar face, the waiter who had brought me the bill that night with Derek. He gave me a small nod of recognition and what looked like respect. My presentation was met with enthusiastic applause. As I returned to my seat, Eleanor Grant, the formidable board chair who had stood by me during the nepotism accusations, stopped me with a light touch on my arm. "Impressive work, Emma. The board has decided to implement your proposed global marketing strategy for the next fiscal year. With a significant budget increase, I might add." "Thank you, Eleanor. My team will be thrilled. It was your vision that sold us," she said. "You've proven yourself to be an invaluable asset to this company, family connection or not." Later in the evening, during a brief lull in the festivities, I excused myself and walked to the exact table where I had sat with Derek a year ago. I stood there for a moment, remembering the shame, the hurt, the disbelief. "Penny for your thoughts?" Thomas appeared at my side, offering a glass of champagne, just reflecting on how much can change in a year. I accepted the glass, clinking it gently against his. A year ago, I was sitting right here, being told I should be grateful for scraps of affection from someone who never valued me. And now, Thomas asked, now I'm valued for exactly who I am. By my colleagues, by my friends. I looked at him with a smile. "By you. Especially by me," he confirmed, his eyes warm. As we rejoined the party, my phone vibrated with an incoming call. Jessica Winters, the journalist whose exposé had helped bring Derek to justice. "Emma, sorry to bother you on a Saturday night," she said when I answered, stepping into a quiet corner. "But I had to tell you right away, the book deal came through. They want Small No More, Breaking the Cycle of Emotional Manipulation, to be the lead title for their spring publishing season." The book had been Jessica's idea initially, expanding my story and the stories of other women into a comprehensive guide for recognizing and escaping relationships like the one I had with Derek. We had been co-writing it for months, turning pain into purpose. "That's incredible news," I replied, genuine excitement bubbling through me. "There's more," Jessica continued. "They want us to do a nationwide speaking tour. Universities, corporations, women's organizations, all wanting to implement awareness programs based on our research." By the time I returned to the table, I felt as though I was floating on air. Uncle Robert noticed my expression immediately. "Good news?" he asked. I nodded, sharing the details about the book deal and speaking tour. "I'm so proud of you, Emma," he said, his eyes glistening slightly. "Your parents would be too, not just for your success, but for how you've used your experience to help others." The mention of my parents, gone for over a decade now, brought a lump to my throat. "Do you really think so?" "I know so. Your mother never let anyone diminish her light, and your father always stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult." He squeezed my hand. "You're their daughter in every way that matters." As the evening drew to a close, Thomas and I stepped outside into the cool night air. The same valet who had witnessed me leaving alone in tears a year ago now held the door for both of us, a respectful, "Have a wonderful evening," replacing the pitying glance of before. "What a difference a year makes," I murmured as we drove away. Thomas glanced over at me. "Any regrets?" I considered the question seriously. "About leaving Derek?" "Not one." "About staying with him for 3 years?" "Many." I looked out at the city lights blurring past. "But I've learned that regret is only useful if it teaches you something." "And what did it teach you?" he asked. "That I'm enough. That I always was." I turned to face him. "And that real love doesn't require you to be less so someone else can feel like more." When we arrived home, our home now, filled with both our books and photos and the comfortable clutter of two lives merging, Thomas pulled me into a dance in our living room, no music needed. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "I was going to wait for a special occasion, but I think tonight qualifies." It wasn't a ring. We had already discussed marriage and agreed we weren't ready yet. Instead, he handed me a small velvet box containing a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a phoenix. "To remind you of who you are," he said as he fastened it around my neck. "Someone who rose from the ashes stronger and more beautiful than before." That night, as Thomas slept beside me, I opened my laptop and began writing the foreword to our book. This story doesn't begin with once upon a time, and it doesn't end with a Prince Charming saving the day. It begins with a woman being told she should be grateful for crumbs, and it ends with her realizing she deserved the whole bakery all along. It's not just my story. It might be yours too. And if you're reading this while questioning your worth, doubting your instincts, or shrinking yourself to please someone who will never be satisfied, I want you to know one thing. You were enough from the start. The journey back to that truth might be the hardest thing you'll ever do. But I promise you this. On the other side of fear, past the guilt and the shame and the desperate need for approval, there's a version of yourself waiting to be rediscovered. She's strong, she's worthy, and she's been there all along. This book is dedicated to her, to the woman you were before someone told you to be less, and to the woman you'll become when you finally, defiantly, gloriously decide to be exactly who you are. Welcome back. We've been waiting for you. I closed the laptop with a sense of completion that went beyond words on a page. Derek had called me a girl who should be grateful he even dated me. He was wrong about so many things, but perhaps he was right about one. I was grateful. Not for his cruelty, but for the strength I found in surviving it. Not for his criticism, but for the voice I discovered in rejecting it. Not for his love, which wasn't love at all, but for finally learning to love myself enough to walk away. Some lessons come with a painfully high price, but once learned, they're yours forever. And that, more than any revenge or success or validation, was the true victory.